Welcome back, rulers, after a long week of Force of Will to the Teacher's Lounge, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast featuring myself, Jeremy Franklin, and I am joined this week by Mike Rance, back once again.
Hello!
And this week it's the ghost of Josh Patton.
Spooky!
Say hi,
This
Josh.
is weird. Hi. What?
Hi.
Can you not hear me?
We can hear you. What's up?
Alright, just checking. I said hi.
Cool. So,
Cool.
we want to welcome you all. Before we get started, as always, if you like what we do here on Ruler School and you want to support us, please consider subscribing and also becoming a member. There is that little join button. It's probably right below where I am. It's a little button right below the video that says join. If you click that, it's a new way to support the channel. It gets you access to our live chats. Toby Gaffney showing off the emojis in the members-only chat for these streams. Also be members-only for the GP streams. Just as a little fun fact, I did some analytics today. A $2 a month membership on the channel is equivalent to watching over 400 videos on the channel in terms of support for what our ad revenue rates currently are. So if you like
That's
what we
pretty
do
solid.
and you want to support us, please consider clicking that join button. The more members we have, the more emojis we can hang it. And also, I would like to point out, I have every single Chibi Will coin that exists outside of the new Melgus and Faria ones, and any of those can be turned into emojis. So the more people we have, the more emojis we get. So please consider clicking on that button. Acteon Warrig, welcome. You were our member from last week. Glad to have you
Hi,
be with us
Scott.
today. So thank you guys for being here. And get those Keurig flexes in the chat if you remember. Now, with that shilling out of the way, Ryan Miles has texted me that he is late but coming, so here we go. We can win on that. But tonight is mailbag night. I asked in the Force of Will group earlier this week. There are some weeks where just based on what's going on and what we kind of talked about recently, we don't really have a core topic that we think that we could really go on about for an hour. So in those weeks, we turn to you guys. And for that, I have a list of questions. Now, the question is, do we wait until Ryan gets here to get started, or do we just jump right in? Actually, you know what? I tell you what. We're going to address the first question, and the first question is entirely dictated towards Mike. And Mike, I have this question here, right? It's an episode where the question is, he wants some idiot to talk about how Gorgons are the best thing ever, and he's glad they're coming back. So until Ryan shows up, you have the floor for that question.
That dude sounds fucking smart. I don't know about you, man.
Take the floor about why Gorgons are great.
So, let's talk about Gorgons, shall we? Now, I like snakes. I like cute girls. Put the two together, and just like, right there, perfect. It's just perfection. Listen, okay, so I know you all know Medusa. I know you know when you go into the combat step, you look at Medusa and you go, all right, I guess I'm not doing anything. Oops, sorry. But then it's just like, Medusa's there. She's cool. She's great. She's going to be awesome. She's going to cost 2 because you're going to have the 2/5 that makes them cost 1 less. And when Medusa dies, oops, she comes back. Look at that. There she goes. And we also got your Riley, who I love. Steno, you can just ignore Steno. She doesn't do anything, but she gives a couple of buffs. But also, hey, look, it's Ryan. But so the first deck I ever played in this game, I was brought into my locals back in Delaware by a group of friends who were just like kind of throwing some stuff together, and they're like, here you go, Mike, play Blue-White Arla with the Gorgons. And the card that I immediately fell in love with was Riley, because she comes down as a 3-drop, she's super slow, she taps down one thing, and the thing doesn't untap while she's on the board. And it's just like, that sounds awful nowadays, but me, starting off in the game with no prior experience in Force of Will, I'm like, this card's the best thing ever. Nobody can beat this card. How are they supposed to remove it? If I'm tapping down these things, this is so good. Oh my god. So, fast forward to now. They're unplayable pretty much because New Frontiers is still fast. Like really fast. Like stupid fast. It's not as fast as Wanderer. Stupid fucking fast though. But you know what? That doesn't matter. Because I'm going to put Valentina together once Valentina's out. I'm going to put the Gorgons in that deck with the Gorgon-loving card. It's a 2/5 for 1. That's great. It's Dark Alistats, but it doesn't draw you 2 cards. Imagine if it did. Oops. But then... so
New
we're going to pull
Frontiers
that
is as
into...
fast as Kenyans. You wrote
Kenyans. So you're going to put all that together with the Regalia, with Space-Time Anomaly, because everybody knows Space-Time Anomaly is the best removal spell in the game. Right, Ryan Miles? Right, Ryan Miles. Everybody knows that. 0 mana, draw 2, foresees a mage art. How crazy is that? It's going to be so much worse than Divinity, but that's okay, because you know what we get to do? We get to put that into Valentina. We get to. Do you know what 4C can do?
I'm gonna
That-
mute Mike here in a second. We're going on some crazy tangents.
You said I had the floor.
I came in and I just hear about Gorgons. I don't even know what this Gorgon card is that he's talking about, to be honest. I just actually have no clue what he's talking about. So
Good.
So
That's
I
exactly
will
what
use
we
this
need.
as a jumping point, though. That's something that I want to kind of break
jumping
out
off a
from Mike's
bridge
ranting.
point because we're talking about Gorgons.
No, well, talking about this idea of what Mike is talking about in the form of older cards that got people into Force of Will, that got people excited about Force of Will, coming back with some new support. And I was speaking to someone the other day about how I even mentioned it to Mike just before we started tonight. The way that Alice Origins has been designed, especially with the second set too, is really interesting in that it gives a lot of thought, or it gives a lot of cool new things to potentially integrate into the competitive scene. Like, we still got to figure out what's going on there because there's a lot of new stuff, but also it gives a lot of cool stuff to the local scene, the players who want to play fun stuff, want to play cool synergistic stuff without necessarily thinking about getting too competitive. Which, if we look at like Rhea cluster or like early new Valhalla cluster, when a new set came out, like there was so much just like trash in the form of like not even fun to play locally.
The
kind of
0-8 for one kind
Yeah,
of
like
stuff.
just like boring cards, like boring
Yeah.
cards that filled out the set. That were just like, man, I'm really only focused on the competitive stuff, and if I want to play a deck at all, that's what I got to play because that's the cool stuff. Whereas opposed to now, Alice Origins and Alice 1 and 2 have a lot of cool things that I'm like, I can tell that this is probably not going to be competitive, but it is going to be fun at a local level. And I think that's been pretty cool. Like this past, so I think that's pretty cool. I kind of want to know your guys' thoughts on that.
Wait, before that, I need to finish my thought from the rant that I had going on. I just need
Yeah, I was
to
about
one
to
more
say, though,
thing.
you got him like mid-climax. He was like
Yeah,
2
Yeah.
seconds from telling me why
Oh,
Gorgons
goodness.
is going to take
fucking
Vegas.
cock blocked by Jeremy Franklin.
Jeez.
My
Oh,
stream,
buddy.
so-
But anyway, my final point. So my final point. This is the main takeaway I want for everybody in the chat right now. Everybody who's thinking that they're going to be playing Perfect Loki. Everybody who thinks they're going to be playing, any deck revolving around Kaguya. So, your best play. Ready? Invitation can draw you 1 Gorgon for 2 mana. For C,
Okay.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
Go
What happens
on.
next? I'm locked into the story. I really need to know what happens
I'm
next,
here.
Mike.
I'll be here.
Or
We're like
see, Gorgons.
17 chapters in. Let's go.
I can draw you 2 Gorgons for 0 mana. I rest my case.
That's insane. Oh my god. I think Mike broke the format, guys. This guy's on another goddamn level.
If someone doesn't
So-
play,
Broke
if someone doesn't
myself,
play
I'm done.
Gorgons at Vegas, I'm gonna be sorely disappointed.
Yo, if anybody plays Gorgons, they're gonna get my seal of approval. I'll fly out to Vegas just to smooch them if they get top, if they got the championship.
Just to smooch him.
I mean, it's whatever they want, honestly. The smooch is just kind of, it happens. It happens if you top with a Medusa and your Riley in your deck. That's all I'm saying.
There we go.
Mike Rance's seal of approval is like right up there with the seal of Lenneth in like playable New Frontier shit.
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
like,
And I don't even remove you from the game. You don't even get it back. I just kiss you.
Hey, AM2, welcome. We have a new alumni. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us as a member
Welcome.
here on the channel. So, welcome. So, you guys, thoughts, Ryan and Ghost of Josh, in terms of this like local playability fun stuff?
In terms of the power of foresee into double Gorgon. That's what I want to know.
Nor Mike.
So I think what I've seen a lot, and at least, I definitely saw it up here in Canada when I went up to this tournament, is a lot of people are playing the newer stuff and having success with it. You know what I mean? It can come out of nowhere and it can kind of shape a local meta, around it. And so like Melgus right now has been like a real big local killer, you know what I mean? Like, it's just when you go to locals, you best be ready to play Melgus because he there and everybody loves him and everybody's having fun with it, right? And so, kind of along that lines, I think when AO2 comes out, it's only going to get 3 times better. We're bringing back 3 of just real powerful lore and powerful like nostalgia characters. You know, I know Prisha for me is just like, man, let's go. I got to make her good.
Yeah, I've had 3
You know what I
people.
mean?
I've had 3 people already say that they're coming back to Force the Will just because Priscia's coming back as a character.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
weak,
I
yes,
had
but
to.
fine.
I PM'd a friend from my locals. I was like, hey, yeah, because I did the same thing when it was like the red green one that came back from Echoes of the New World, or the one right before that, Return of the Emperor.
RDE.
Yeah, I was like, hey, your girl's back, and he's like, oh, dude, I'm coming back, and so I just did that again. I was just like, hey, your girl's back. Oh, okay.
I know. Yeah, Zach Tufford actually messaged me today, and he's like, "Yo, Priscia's coming back," and I'm like, "Yeah, but have we seen Priscia yet? I don't think we have, but we saw her.
We've seen all the
Oh, we
rules.
did. All right. Yeah, I told him it was bad, and he was like, "No, don't tell me that." And I'm like, "She's probably like a bottom 3 ruler in the entire format, if not bottom 2, honestly."
Whoa!
And he's like,
Stop
"I'm like,
saying
I'm not
Zach
gonna
Tufford
lie to you."
name.
Yeah, so
Kidding
like,
me?
I'm still gonna bully him into coming back, but like, let's not kid ourselves here. That ruler is like hot garbage by a country mile.
I mean, you didn't have to say it out loud though. Like,
I didn't
come
have
on,
to,
like,
but I just
this
want to.
is- that's
I am
someone's
brutal,
waifu.
competitive
That's someone's
spike.
waifu.
I'm brutal, competitive spike honesty above all else. Mike can go on here and talk.
Good for her front side because of her support cards, but I can agree that on her J ruler side, she's probably the wonkiest.
If I can come into this podcast and just listen to Mike talking about Gorgons, I can give you the hard truth about Priscia for 30 seconds. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
fair.
sorry.
There we go.
I think.
Right. Are you telling me the power of friendship is gonna not be more powerful than Spike World Championship mentality?
Yes, this is an anime. I absolutely agree. This is an anime, and she has the
You're the
waifu power.
villain.
But the Miles brothers are the main characters. We're going to win anyway, and we're not going to play Priscia. I'm sorry
Or
to
the
tell you.
Michael Jackson.
I'm gonna be
vampire.
honest with you. I think you're the only one left. I don't even think your brother's around anymore.
Yeah,
for
he still
you.
plays. I don't think he's
No,
going to be in.
He's gonna be doing like career man, like LOR, like commentary.
That's what
I
I'm
think you're
doing.
on
That's
your
what
own,
I'm doing.
buddy.
The same thing. I forgot that I had this podcast because I was streaming Legends of Runeterra, and I get Jeremy's message, and I'm like, "Huh, it's 9 o'clock. I'm like on like a 7-win, like 7-2 with the Shadow Isles deck. I'm like, I have to go talk about Force of Will. I haven't played that game since Legends of Runeterra come out, but we're talking about Force of Will today. So
Yeah.
what else we got? What else we got?
So our next question, speaking of it's in the same vein. This is from Logan Moses. He asks, how to keep locals fresh. Though a lot of us are getting stale with the current meta.
Hold on. I need to talk about this.
Yeah.
What in the heck is stale about the current meta? And I mean, especially on the local levels. Like, I mean,
I got
I'm
you.
talking.
I can answer
in
this.
3 months. In 3 months, I've played like 10 different decks. Like, and they are all awesome.
How many of those decks, out of curiosity, contained at least one DBV super rare? Is it 10? It's 9? Okay, it's 9.
I don't
Can you
think
see
I don't think
maybe
I
where
put
some
one in
people
Melbourne.
might
How many of
think
them are
that
Dark Alice Rabbit Princess?
yeah, Dark Alice perfect Loki I think
that was
is
in my Melgus. That might have
I
been
think
in my
perfect
Melgus.
Loki is like the main killer. Like I'm sure like maybe 4 or 5 of those decks had perfect Loki in it, and that's like the most frustrating card at a casual level to deal with because like I want to play Force of Will, and then they're like, well, you don't get to play Resonators, and they're like, wow, I want to die, and that's just the experience of that kind of matchup, honestly. At a like more higher competitive level, I think there is more interaction. There's things you can do. Melgus can go over the top of Perfect Loki, but like when you're the casual player or even like a semi-competitive player playing something that isn't Perfect Loki, you say you want to play the Melgus and bring it, and then like you've got all this over the top burn to just like completely win the game, but then like they go, oh, before untap, play Perfect Loki, and I like, wow, I can't play my Shakti at all, so I can't do my double burn spell shenanigans. I can't flip my J ruler at all. Like you're just locked out of even like playing the turn. It's just instant speed. I can't play dudes this turn. Even like just to have them die immediately, I can't like respond. It's just like, wow, no chase, just no reaction, just not fun stuff. Really.
Logan speaks in the chat. Logan's in the chat right now saying we don't play bad decks. If you want to keep locals fresh, sometimes you just say, hey, let's play bad decks. Like to be perfectly
that's
honest,
fair.
Yeah,
do.
like go win with a bad deck. Like that's what you gotta do.
This past week at locals, I have now gotten into the habit of I'll bring a deck that I'm trying to record for the channel, and I will bring red-white Lenneth goddesses. Like because I enjoy that deck. It's very fun. It's not competitive in any way, but it's enough fun to play at a local level that if someone I'm playing against is like a newer player, a more chill player, I'll play that against them. The other thing that you can do, especially if you all know each other really well, and this that might be a question for Svetlana, is you play in a tournament that allows you to change decks between rounds, which is based on the person you're playing against. Our locals doesn't care because, one, I don't pay into the tournament and I only get promos. I don't get any like cash prizing or anything else like that, just because of the contract I have set up. Like I don't pay in, but I don't get paid out. So people don't mind if I flip-flop decks. But also, sometimes at your locals, they just don't care. And so then if you're a competitive player and you sit down across from a competitive player, you can be like, okay, cool, we're playing competitive. Like, that's the mindset. Or you sit down from someone who's brand new, 2 to 3 weeks in, maybe a month in, doesn't have access to that stuff, and you go, okay, cool, I will play the more casual deck against you. That, I think, is something that it does help prevent things from getting stale, because then you're not always just, like, crushing your opponent every single time if they're a newer player, and you have some fun playing some kind of jank stuff. But you also still have the opportunity to be able to, like, test your competitive grind out if you want to.
I think on another note, if we even go back like the past full year and just look at what decks were competitive, if we go back to like Time Spinning Witch, like the meta was like Time Spinning Witch, and then there was some Quick Cast Hanzo deck, but it was like do Lorite things or lose to Lorite, right? You couldn't play anything that was Lorite susceptible or wasn't like also playing Lorite.
Right.
And then we ban all that nonsense, and then still pretty Quick Cast Hanzo focused, I would say. There was some other cool stuff like some Brunhild, but really it was, I would say, mostly green dominant still. So we just Lorite format. Then Alter comes out, and now we have black decks that are really good. So then, like starting 9 months ago, I want to say it's like Alter, Layla, black decks are just very, very good for 3 months. And then DBV comes out, and now it's Alter, Layla, black decks now with perfect Loki, and green bullshit Lorite decks now with Kaguya. So it's just like, okay, so it's black Alter bullshit or green Kaguya Lorite bullshit. Lorite finally rotates, and then we're still just kind of back to either Kaguya bullshit or perfect Loki nonsense. So there's still, like, for the past year, when you really break it down, it's either been like quick cast, you don't get to play the game.
Even like Isis is like playing things like Alter, like stuff like that. Like
or there was Kirik, and now we just have Isis, which is Kirik but better. So and still bad, but better than Kirik, right? So like it's just the same 3 archetypes. There's black ramp stuff, green quick cast stuff, red kill you, but now with more interaction. Like I can see where the stale aspect comes in, even just from like over the past year, not even on just like the past couple of months since DBV came out.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to combat it is having a conversation among your locals. Go ahead, Josh.
I'm having a hard time seeing it. Like it's just like I'm trying to think of a world where like 3 decks. Okay, I can agree with you. Isis, Hanzo, perfect Loki. That's where we're at. But like, what else do you need? Like you have 3 top tier decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's like the same 3 top tier decks that have been the top tier decks for almost a year now, and like the cards have changed, the iterations have changed, the tools have changed, but really that's like what you're doing, right?
And dude, also, but hold on, let's be honest. Yeah. Like if you want to talk about a stale stuff, like the Time Spinning Witch meta didn't exist till you won with Time Spinning Witch. Quick Cast Hanzo didn't exist till you won with Quick Cast Hanzo.
But then Gil was also a popular deck, which is basically the same thing as Quick Cast Hanzo, but even less fun. And like I never played that deck, but it was still just like, if you went to a locals and someone's playing Gil, are you having a good time? Then Alter decks come out, Gil kind of falls off, and then Kaguya comes out. Like, are you really having a good time? Like,
okay, was there ever a moment in Force of Will's history
where green quick cast wasn't just insane?
No, where there wasn't a deck that was top tier over everybody. So I mean, essentially what you're saying is losing doesn't feel good to the average player, and by having this thing that makes people lose more than others makes it stale.
I wouldn't say that. I just think that it's these types of decks that have been completely dominant for a very, very long time. Like if we go back to basically Time Spinning Witch, and we'll call that a Lorite format, it's been over a year. Or like Time Spinning Witch is kind of a quick cast green deck when you break it down, but that's like semantics. Before that, yes, we had tier 0 decks, but you could like collectively as a store say, hey, let's all not play Prisia. And then there was like a decent spread of decks you could play, and they were all unique and they were all different, and they were not something that had been played even last format. Like every time something new came out, like even when we go back to like when Fox came out, it was like, okay, there's Fox, but there's also Lumia because we have Captain Hook. And then when Prisia came out, was that the same set? No. Prisia was
after that.
Prisia was good for that entire format.
Prisia was after Fox.
Oh, we started getting like Severing Winds and Demonic Dead, but like Fox was out for a while because we got. I want to say it definitely wasn't. Was Prisia the third of the cluster?
Third, yeah.
Yeah. So like we had Lumia, we had Fox. Like the first set of Lapis cluster was one of the most diverse formats we've ever had. That's like the golden days, right? I don't remember. Second set was Fox with Lumia, yeah, and then third we had Prisia. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, we're playing Prisia, but we haven't had aggro for the past 2 sets, so it doesn't feel bad to have aggro, even though it's tier 0.
So you're going back all the way to LEL. You're saying LEL was the last time anybody had fun.
Well, I'm saying we had tier 0 formats, but it wasn't stale, right? Like it was different. Reflect Refrain was pretty stale, I would say, because everything there were different Reflect Refrain decks, but like that was kind of boring. But like it was like, okay, Fox is super good, Lumia super good, like pretty good format. Then Prisia, tier 0, really obnoxious, local killer, but not stale. And then Demonic Dead comes out, and then Prisia and Fox like in competition. But it's like it's nice to have Fox back, and like the games are interesting enough. Rotation happens, we get into Favor. Now Favor is the best deck, but it's different from Fox and Prisia. Keeps going. What comes after Favor? I don't even remember at this point.
What he's essentially, to break it down, is that the new types of cards are creating new decks. So while they're strong, there's something new. Whereas opposed to right now with AO right now with the reliance on DBV stuff, and even since before then like Lorite with Time Splitting Witch, the decks themselves might be changing some cards, might be changing the ruler, but ultimately what the deck is kind of revolving around is still like the same old pattern. And so in that sense, there is a capability to become stale, I think is what he's trying to speak to. Maybe I'm
that's pretty much correct. Yeah.
So, and I think that's just personal preference, because I mean I think that's also just like the way you feel the game, because to me, trying out different card combinations and trying out different things, even if the deck is trying to do something similar, to me doesn't necessarily feel stale. But to a community like over in Minnesota, that might feel stale, because it's like, oh, it's just like the same. You're still just trying to do the same thing, even if the cards are different. So that's So I get it. Everybody's.
How about then? In answer to the question, you can do 2 things. You can either ban DBV at a local level, or you can have a rotating ban list that basically says whatever deck won last week, you can't play any card that was played in that deck.
Oof.
Oh, so that's very complicated in some capacity, not only due to card accessibility, but also like now you can't just have walk-in players come to your locals, right? Like if I just want to show up to your local store because I saw they're hosting Forceful tournaments, you're like, oh, by the way, you can't play this deck from last week, and you're like, oh, this is what I brought. Like that's kind of an accessibility thing. Maybe it's small enough that it's not an issue.
That's why I think the easiest way is, especially those of us who do have card accessibility, who have access to a lot of different stuff, bring 2 decks. Like just talk to your locals about the idea of allowing. I don't know anybody who fills out a deck list for locals, right? So like, I've certainly never filled out a deck list for locals. So I think if you have the conversation of just like, you don't have to be locked in to a certain deck for the whole night, then I think you'll have that kind of with the intention of that being adjust your deck based on who you're playing against, like agreement in that way, then I think you're in a good shape. Like I've gotten into the habit of my locals of, if I'm not recording, I'll ask my opponent, I'll say, I've got this deck and I've got this deck. This is the more competitive one, and then there's this one. Which one do you want to play against? Like I give that to my opponent and then like make that decision from there. And none of the players at my locals complain about it, and I have fun every single week. So I think that's definitely something that you guys can commit to. I think it's pretty easy potentially, but again, that's up to you to discuss with your locals. I think ultimately it all comes down to the easiest way to prevent things from being stale is just talk. Just talk amongst your locals and come up with a plan, rather than all just show up every week with something hoping that it's less stale than last week. Have a better communication about it.
Definitely try and get a friend like Jeremy, because Jeremy's the type of guy who will bring 2 decks to a tournament. I'm sure Josh is as well. I'm the type of guy that brings 0 decks to a major event, and it's and people like Jeremy that really keep me going.
Using everyone else's card. Yeah.
It's people. Yeah.
So I do want to move on to our next question. Stephen Wells made the statement of he'd like acknowledgement of buffing older cards due to the new stuff. I think it's a great way to balance power creep. I don't necessarily know if it's a great way to balance power creep. I do think it's a way to get people interested and reintroduce some older stuff that didn't get better flushed out. Like, Snow White, for instance, even the creation of the blue-black masked prince in the Valentina structure deck immediately makes Snow White, the
Cinderella.
Valkyrie of Glass, a way more fun card. I remember people
Yeah, it
trying
is
to do silly
Cinderella.
things. Like, that card was like had zero support outside of Valentina flashing her in so that she was an 8/8 on your opponent's turn and then bounce her back on
And
your
also
turn.
Valkyrie Alice, who made it so that she couldn't lose counters.
Yeah, like
That's-
that was it. That was it. And that card was pretty much unplayable. But the existence of like a card like Masked Prince immediately says, "Oh wait, no, you can just on curve play this 2-drop, get this other 2-drop, and keep counters on her." So now that's a card that I would want to try to experiment with and play around with and use. Like the new Four Sacred Beast stuff, the new Beast, even the regular Beast stuff, the Gorgon stuff. Like, I think the reintroduction of older cards has been a fantastic way to get people jazzed about the game again in such a way that like is relatively easy and fits into what the company's trying to do for cost saving measures. Like it's way easier to take 3 reprints that were from old times, and we're like, okay, we're gonna reprint these sets and then design 1 new card or 2 new cards to support them and make them way cooler and way more useful than it is to try to come up the top of your head with an entirely new mechanic and like reintroduce it. So I think that's been really cool. I still think while DBV exists, the notion of new cards challenging power creep is something that we're gonna have to take with a grain of salt. Just because they're hard to combat, like it is. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
No, I agree with that. I think so. From a standpoint of, because before I was in Force Will, I was actually in Yu-Gi-Oh, and anytime.
Oh god, I'm so sorry.
I know. Thank you.
Oh, come on, you too, buddy.
Yeah, I feel terrible every day. I mean,
Exactly.
Me too.
Yep. No, but the thing is, because I remember the nostalgia thing with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like there's no rotating formats. It's just like power creep would just oust any other decks that were playing, or they just get all their cards banned. Yada yada yada. Predatory marketing schemes, Konami, money, whatever. But
Buddy.
yeah, that's all it is. But no, the big thing with that is that. So take for example one of my favorite decks of all time, and Ryan's gonna appreciate Scraps. And when Scraps got Scrap Factory, I looked at it and I'm like, all right, legacy support for Scraps. I want to play them. They might be cool. Let's try them out. Played them for probably about 6 months, and I just enjoyed the hell out of it. My locals were more fun. It wasn't super competitive at that point. There were still a lot of weaknesses for the deck, but like I was enjoying playing Yu-Gi-Oh again, as opposed to what I was doing when I was just building whatever no-brain deck was doing well at the time.
Yep.
So I'm all for reprints and printing stuff along with those reprints to balance them out. Because like you guys heard how stupid excited I am about Gorgons, because I've got the nostalgia blindness around them, but like 2-cost Medusa is just something that sounds fun to me, and I want to use it really bad.
Yeah, and I think AO2's reprints, in terms of how they're supporting the reprints, they've already improved than they were from AO1.
Yeah.
AO1 had a lot of reprints and not a lot of like newness to support those reprints. Like we didn't get a lot of new Knights of the Round Table. We got the Strangers. We got like Alice, who could make everybody a Knight of the Round Table. So
we also had the 1-mana 4/4. Look at the top card of your deck.
We got Lamorak. Like we got some, but it was more like, oh hey, here's a new Knight of the Round Table. So it was like passive. Yeah. Whereas this stuff is like directly like, hey, we're gonna try to make these cards better, not just give you another one of these cards.
If you just find like an undersupported type of, like an undersupported race, even an undersupported named card, like Vivienne searches Avalon. Avalon is trash. Avalon is one of the worst cards I think Force Will's ever printed. But when you stack it onto a 6/6 body that just gets you quick cast and an extra little thing to buff your stuff, cards it's terrible still, but like
But it's fun.
it turns it from a card that you wouldn't even think about putting in a deck to like a patches, if you will, if you play Hearthstone, where it's just like it's a thing that could make your deck a little better in the long run as long as you don't draw it.
Yeah.
And if you're playing blue, there's a chance that you don't have to draw it because you could just, draw a couple of cards, look at the top cards of your deck, put them back on, put them on the bottom. It makes sense in like a blue-white scenario. They picked a good color combination for it. I commend them for that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this question before we move to the next one, gentlemen?
I think
No.
I'm interested that they've taken already good cards and kind of puts that subcategory of like the sword art or the mage art on them.
Yeah,
Just to kind of give them that little bit of a power bump. You know what I mean? And so like these cards were already playable back in the original formats that we were playing, but like that little bit of oomph that it kind of gives them really helps, I think, in kind of like the creativity. Because I've thought about it and like I wonder if rapid growth wasn't a sword art, are we still going to play it? Is it going to find its way into the kind of decks that we're playing nowadays? Same thing with space-time anomaly. I know that's one of the arguments that we've had is, if it wasn't a mage art, would you even play it? Or is it too slow at that point? So I think that's all. I'm very impressed that the company had the balls to do that. You know what I mean? To just completely.
I'm interested to see what rapid growth as a sword art does against perfect Loki stuff.
Probably not much.
I mean, we'll have to see, right? Because like rapid growth was one of the biggest like counterplay around final battles. So
But
we'll see.
Yeah, but it was when
implementation.
final battle was at sorcery speed.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, curious. I don't know for a fact. Curious. And
Good words.
And I think that's one of the things. I think that's a good. With all these reprints and these new supports and these new cards and like Josh was saying with like adding the subtype, I think when I look at all these new reprints, all these new cards, the biggest thing I have is curiosity in the sense of like, what is this going to do? Because for the longest time, when a new set would come out, and I think we can say, we can attest to this before, we've done card reviews before. We've looked at new cards, and just been like, oh yeah, this is trash. It's not going to have an impact. Or like, this is very clearly going to have an impact on the meta. It's kind of been like all or nothing. Like we know that it's going to be impactful, or we know for a fact that it's not.
Yeah, I don't
sometimes we're dead wrong.
Sometimes
I don't think anybody misses.
Sometimes we are dead wrong for sure. But like, no one ever really seems to be in the middle of like, I wonder. Like, not quite sure what it's going to do to the meta. And especially this set and the new changing of like the subtyping and everything else. That actually has me curious on a lot of these cards. Like I find myself going, it could be good, it could not be good, but I can't say for certain which way it's gonna fall. Which I think is cool and exciting, and it makes it. I'm pumped for next set. Also,
I mean, I certainly don't miss.
You remember
Hey, Andrew.
Welcome to the channel.
Hey, friend.
Welcome, buddy.
See you in Vegas, buddy.
Yeah, Vegas.
I don't miss 100 card sets and only 5 of them being playable.
Yes, I actually have not minded the smaller sets, to be perfectly honest.
Well, because there's more cards that we can play with in these, right? And technically, we're not even getting smaller sets. You know what I mean? So
it also makes
there are
because we're getting the starter decks.
Unique. Yeah, there's 8 unique cards in the starter deck. There's 8 unique cards. So like at least 16 there, right? And then. So, God, yeah, it feels pretty good, honestly.
It makes spoiler season a lot cooler.
Yes.
Because every card is like, oh, that is something I now have to think about.
Yeah.
Whereas before it's like, wow, they spoiled some commons and I don't care. But now it's like, even we've got some reprints that don't matter, like a Fank the Beaver and like stuff. But it's like, oh,
Beaver's
we got rapid growth.
Let's go.
Hey, man,
all right, Gorgon boy.
Finish in Collinsville once.
Oh my god, yeah, that was but yeah, it's like there's stuff that like is changing even those reprints, and it's also just like the context. So it's like when we see these reprint cards, it's like, that's different. It's the same card I know and love, but it's different now because everything is different around it, and I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah.
But
like
Wyber. Wyber might be good now. I don't know. I have no idea.
We'll see.
Machine Gwybers.
Imagine if Faber Gwyber was legal in New Frontiers.
Yeah.
I do want to talk real quick about the next question we have here is from our good friend Brandon Bremont.
Never heard of him.
He asks, what he should play in Vegas.
Wait for
Machines.
spoilers to be done.
Machines.
I'm gonna say Argent Saga. Just take all of Jim's money. He's still putting like 5K on that tournament, and it's free.
Oh my goodness.
So, actually, wait. I will say, I don't know if we've had it spoiled yet or not. I have sort of been paying attention to spoilers. I don't know if it was actually spoiled, if we're getting it or not. But if we get Remote Control Beast in this set, play Arthur Machines. That's going to be... That deck's basically...
on his front side.
Isn't Machina a machine on his front side? Why would we play
On
Arthur?
his front side.
Yeah, he's a human.
No.
Doesn't he deal like 50 damage when he deactivates? Like we'll hang on to the Remote Control Beast until we flip, and then just be like, all right, here's some beast. Let's
I'm
go.
pretty sure it's just a 7 Kings on the backside.
He's a
right?
machine.
No,
He's a
he's
machine
is?
slash 7
Okay.
Kings.
He's
There's-
never been a machine.
there's
before.
no way.
It's garbage.
God, of all the machine,
He gives up his humanity because Maribel dies.
Yeah.
Maribel dies.
Hey, spoilers.
of all of the machine cards, I would never ever want to see again. I think Remote Control Beast is like, it's either number 1 or number 2. March is the other one for sure, and I don't actually know which one I hate the idea of more. That's terrifying.
I'll say Remote Control Beast. That card's
So-
not.
Next question we have, we've Cameron Vandenberg asks the base of teams in Force Duel, how we've seen them come and go, maybe some of the reasons and how TCG's teams could translate. So this is I have been on a couple of teams. Ryan has been on a couple of teams.
I have.
Josh currently runs essentially the only team currently. That
Whoa. There's
It's
one
true.
more team. It's Team Ryan Miles, and I'm killing it out there, right? What's Rose Guild got on Team Ryan Miles?
and
Toronto.
and then Mike Rance has a content creation team. Former.
But Deepwood was technically a competitive team for a little while after I left for the RG team.
Yeah.
Mm.
That was, and there was
Speaking.
Team ARG.
There was,
It
yeah.
was.
That was the thing for kind of. So
I've
I
actually
think-
been.
I think we've had the conversation about teams before in the sense of like what benefit they have. I think in the terms of rise and fall of them, really, at least in Force Will's history, it's been about motivation for what the team is trying to accomplish has led to a team existing, a team dying out, a team being born, a team dying out, that kind of wave. I'll take, for example, the Ogres, right? The Ogres started as a team on our end because Epunk wanted to have a US-based Ogre team, and so we started with that competitive drive, but more so than that, it was about the family. Like, Epunk is very, very clear that he wants Team Ogre to be competitive, but he wants them to be a family. Like, that's what he's most interested in. And so then that was what the Ogres tried to do. Like, we tried to be competitive, we tried to represent, we wanted that, but above all, we focused on wanting to be together and have those good experiences. So then the dissolution of that and transition of them to something different came when they started to get interest in other games. So Team Ogre is still around, they just now play Magic. And that's kind of pulled them away from it. And that particularly is because, well, we lost Mike. He's back now. But like, so the Ogres started as a family, started to lose the fun from Force of Will because they just didn't have as many events that we could all get to together, whereas they all could get to more Magic events together. So then they kind of transitioned. That was the goal of that team, so that's how it happened. Rise and fall. Then we had before On Tilt there was Outer World. Outer World was very much just wanting to be super hyper competitive. And then players started getting penalized and not having great times anymore.
It's not an Outer World. Outer World, you were good. Oh wait, no.
That's I don't know.
After I left Outer World and we had On Tilt Gaming, that's when Outer World picked up like Tom Veazey and Andrew Vatlin, those kind of
that was-
scumbags. So
Well, Andrew's great, but like,
I was kidding, yeah.
but I think that there was, that change, and I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but On Tilt was kind of born out of wanting to do more content side of things, right? Because Outer World just showed up and played. That was what they did.
Mhm.
On Tilt was kind of born as a breaking off of that, still wanting to be competitive, but wanting to get into content. So then you have and it breaks off.
Yeah, well, Outer World back in like that first season was pretty content driven, I would say. Like, but we wanted to kind of do our own thing, and focus even more on winning. Like the Outer World team was good. I think like the 2016 Worlds, like 3 of us or 4 of us made. Well, as Zach Tufford wasn't on it, so yeah, 3 of us made top 8 at Worlds that year. Like it was like the competitive team, and then we were like, we want to do our own thing, and then like focus on the branding a bit more. And like Outer World's cool, but it was just like Force of Will tied, and we wanted to be more generic. But yeah, it was still the same thing, just kind of reforming it and being a bit more organized and not having Alex.
But then what happened?
That's fair. So with
Fun-
all
fun
of
story.
that,
But what happened?
Wait, fun story.
What happened to Untilt?
We got invited to join Team ARG, and I knew that I wanted to work with Argent Saga when the game came out. So I thought that it was a good opportunity to get my foot in the door with good old ARG and Jim McMahon, and it worked. I mean, it was the correct play, I would say.
but then
Did it?
we had to change the play later.
Yeah.
So
now
fun
we're good.
story about Outer World.
Mhm.
So Deepwood Force of Will's original channel name was Outer World Force of Will. And then around that time, I got approached by Royce Townsend, who was on the team originally.
Royce, I love Royce.
I love Royce too.
Yeah.
He approached me and he's like, "Hey man, so me and a couple of other guys are putting together this team. We want to use the name Outer World. Do you mind if we use it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, it's fine." So I give them the name. We go with Deepwood. I come back to him and say, "Hey, we came up with Deepwood Force of Will." He's like, "That's so much better. Oh my god."
I will say, all right, the first iteration of Outer World, the first like actual official team name was Cardboard Kings. If any of you guys remember, like David Hartley or Alex
Yep,
with
the Cardboard Kings
the white
t-shirt.
shirt, Cardboard Kings t-shirt, yeah. Like when I won the first Grand Prix I ever won, I wore the Cardboard Kings t-shirt on day 1, and then I didn't wear it on day 2. Yeah, just Sharpied, and I was like, but there was a small consideration, and we tried really hard to push this through. We lost the vote like by 1 for the actual team name. We wanted to be Team 1 Inch Boys because there's a Force Will card called 1 Inch Boy.
And now it's Blandon.
We couldn't get it, so we ended up Cardboard Kings, and then eventually, yeah, Team Outer World.
So so over time, I think part of it, and Ryan can speak to it, I suppose, more in terms of what happened in ARG. With what happened with ARG, everything with people going different ways, and I think all of the disagreements with how the company was running things, as well as certain players who were heading up certain teams no longer being allowed to play this game for different reasons, caused some schisms there. But I think there kind of was this void a little bit, and then Rogues Guild kind of drove up, and Josh, we've spoken before about like Rogues Guild is about being competitive, but it's about players driving each other to grow and be competitive, which forms it to
Steel sharpens steel.
Steel sharpens steel, which brings it to be,
Thanks,
I
King.
think, more of a community. So like as someone who came from Ogre, right? The environment of Rogues Guild is very much more something that I'm comfortable with, because it is, yes, we're trying to be competitive and we're trying to grow together. And and Josh can attest to this. Like I've gotten into some actual competitive discussions and like mindsets more so than I have in a long time talking to the Rogues. But like it's still about that friendship and family, and I think that's why Rogues has kind of been so popular to a lot of people. But then with like ARG, and then ARG decided to try to compete with like the content. And I'm not saying the people who are on Team ARG wanted to compete in this way. I'm saying ARG wanted to compete in this way with like they wanted to be kind of the go-to brand for content, for winning tournaments, the brand recognition, everything else. But I don't think the framework was there from the person who created the team to make that an actual suitable environment. Like it was a goal of what they wanted, but there was no framework on how to get to that. So it was just like a group of people gathered under a banner who all didn't know what they were doing because they had no direction. Not that you guys are unable to do what you need to do, but you didn't know you weren't pointed in a direction and said go. You were just kind of like put there.
So the ARG team was mostly just like a sponsorship. So like the conglomeration of people that we got for the team were kind of just like, hey, you guys consistently win tournaments and have exposure in the community, so let's put an ARG jersey on you when you go to these events to get more exposure for ARG.
Right. I really like the whole we win events a lot, and then you looked at me and you're like, and also maybe are known by the community.
I didn't.
Really
appreciate but that was like, I feel like if I just say, yeah, we were all winning tournaments, and then people look like, hey, who was on Team ARG? It's like, wait a minute, because I mean, like, I don't even think Colin like played in events, but he's like the TCG Scrubs guy.
He played a Sherry event once.
Yeah, he played one event one time. Like, I think I've won more events than that guy has actually played in. Like, I mean, that's just like a fact of it. Yeah, so it was mostly just like getting exposure for ARG and like a sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. So like that team wasn't really about.
Yeah.
That team wasn't about the people in the team. That team was about brand recognition, and so when you have something like that, it's very easy for that to fall apart because you start to recognize that like
it wasn't as close knit as the other teams that like I formed from the ground up. You know, like On Tilt Gaming was the one where it's like, all right, these are the people I want on the team. These are the people that are going to win tournaments and give exposure. These are the people that are going to make content for us, and it's just a good testing environment as well. Back when Forcible was difficult, you know, so like it was a good thing overall.
Deepwood started, like the team Deepwood part started because it was just like a bunch of the Long Island guys getting together and like, you know, just wanting to throw games down, showing up together and being like, hey, we'll sign your Deepwoods, whatever. But then we started getting known as the Meme Lords, and then we got Harold Josefowicz on the team.
The ultimate meme lord.
The ultimate meme. It was, I believe it was right after the Wanderer tournament where he showed up in a suit with donuts.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the turning point where I'm like, yeah, this guy's top quality Deepwood material.
So I you know, the rise and fall of teams I think has ultimately been about what the mission statement of those teams have been, combined with the personal relationship with the game of the players on the team, and I think that those are both kind of really big factors that kind of play into it. I think it's kind of the other thing is too is if the game doesn't have the more of a competitive scene and like competitive recognition that exists for a game, the more of a drive there is to actually form a team, right? Because like you can just be a group of people who play together and make each other better. It doesn't have to be a team. Like you don't have to be a team to do that. And so I think a community like Rogues Guild has that brand recognition and everything else, which is great. But I think part of the mission statement is why, even in this lull of a competitive season, this rebuilding of the competitive environment, you still had the team of Rogues Guild, because it is that community ultimately, not just, hey, look, we're competitive players who show up to an event. Because it's like, why? It's kind of one of those things where like if you're a person just kind of watching and you're like, this is a tournament with 40 people at it, and there's 6 people in jerseys, you're just kind of like, okay, why?
But then 6 of them are in top 8, and you're like, I have had fear struck into my heart. Oh no! Then you know next time.
You know what to do. But I hope that answers your question, Cameron. You know,
well, I guess also I would challenge like anybody, because like there's just kind of like the one step, like if you are a group of friends and you are playing this game and doing everything to make each other better, then I actually do challenge you to actually call yourself a team, come up with a name, and you know, put a logo on it. Because the biggest thing about being on a team is that you stop playing for yourself and you start playing for the others around you, right? Like all of a sudden, you know, it's less about you and more about the team, right? And so like in all seriousness, with like the psychology of it all, like putting a logo, putting a jersey, putting an entity on it, you know what I mean, actually drives that mentality home, you know. So like the jersey that I wear is super important to me, you know. The team is super important to me because it helps get me out of me, right? And so like I totally challenge everybody. Like I'm waiting for the Rogues Guild to have like a true rival.
Team Ryan Miles, bro, catch up.
I mean, when you get a team, like let me know.
I've got a team, dude. I'm killing it.
Let me know, but yeah, I mean, like seriously, like I'm looking overseas, right? Like I'm looking at No Name in Italy, you know. Does anybody know the story on CCG? Are they even a team?
I don't think so. Like Ben mentioned it. like Ben mentioned that I think they're pretty much done for now.
There's the Spain team.
Yeah, the OT Cats.
No, but Team CCG, the one that had Federico and Ben and JBK and Sasha
Federico
and like, Chris was
repping
part of it.
OT Cats at Worlds.
Yeah, like they're done for now. Yeah.
And then we got QuickCast in so like I'm like,
Team Not Nice in Australia as well.
Yeah, Team Not
That's
Nice.
the team I'm actually on, by the way. It's like $50 for a jersey, and I'm gonna, if I think I want to pay $50 for a Team Not Nice jersey, I'll wear it at Vegas. So that's a possibility. Like you might just lose Vegas to Australians, and that might happen.
There you go.
Just so you know.
It'll happen.
There you go. I do want to hit one more question here.
Go ahead.
Because we're kind of coming up on time. Unless, Josh, you have a final point that you wanted to hit?
If you want to be on a team, don't wait for somebody to scoop you up. Make one.
There you go. I will follow that up, though, with if you're going to start scooping people up to be on a team, make sure you're scooping the right people. Not people who are good competitively, but you have to have the right mindset. I have seen a number of teams have people on them that even if they're a part of the team, the only thing they really care about is the glory for themselves. And you don't want to have those people there. Like you need to, like Josh says, the team helps him get away from being just him. It helps him get into that play for the team mentality. Sometimes, especially the competitive players, can have a hard time letting go of can have a hard time getting into the playing for the team mentality. And if you're not careful, it can destroy a team from the inside out, and you can end up losing a lot more than you gained from having that environment. So
if you want to know, like, if you want a good read on teams, go read Patrick Chapin's Next Level Magic. There's a chapter in there about teams and like the dynamic of a team and the success and like the different roles that everybody can play. You know, like not everyone on a team has to be a spike. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can.
That's a big point for sure. Like I mean, all the teams I've been on have been very, very competitive, but like the most successful ones have when we've had like me or Stephanie Shaw or Brandon Bremont just throwing out wild ideas every single day, and then you've got Aaron Miles or Alex Lanham, like, no, it's not good. That's not even remotely competitive. You're an absolute buffoon and a complete idiot. But then like some of us are like, no, this might be the best thing ever. And then sometimes you put it into playtesting and you get bodied 4 games in a row, and you're like, all right, never mind. But then sometimes like that one idea just sticks and it's great. So definitely having different flavors of players is 100% worth it. And one of the reasons that I think teams are such a good idea, because you get those different ideas and experiences aside from your own.
You can be a pilot, you can be a builder, you can be a crafter.
You can be a football playing king in space.
You can. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different.
You can be a rules Nazi.
Yep, there's a lot of different roles that you can bring to the table for sure. I do want to hit this last question though. It is from one of our ruler school members.
Hey,
he's hanging out with us in the chat right now. Yes. This will be a quick one. Basically, what new ruler seems to be the most viable with all the new cards entering the meta?
Val.
I think the obvious choice right now is Val. Second choice is Machina. Third choice is Prisia. The new stuff.
I think Prisia is the 4th choice actually.
Val.
I would rather sign a deck list without a ruler than play Prisia. Like that is
Val.
Okay, so we answered that question. I do have one more from Todd. Todd Dreisbach.
Hey, Todd.
From Pennsylvania.
Asking,
how can people implement sealed with leftover AO1 and AO2 combined? And here's my feedback for that. I think that if you're going to play sealed with, especially with AO or whatever, AO1 or AO2, you can. This is where it gets a little house rule-y, but I think that you can house rule that a regalia that you pull becomes the regalia for the ruler that you play. So the idea of we've played seal for a while where you can proxy any ruler that's from that set. That's been in existence in the past. People have started using that again for this one. The problem is in the set you only have the ruler for the buy box ruler, so that's kind of the regalia for the buy box ruler, so that gets kind of weird. I think that if you could house rule it so that if you pull a regalia, it becomes you've pulled a regalia, so it just becomes the regalia for whatever ruler you decide to play. It immediately opens up a lot more choices for having a lot more fun and allows you to play a lot of different rulers rather than just I would love to play all these blue-black cards, but I pulled the green, I pulled the Maribel, so I guess I'm playing Machina.
I mean, at the same time, it's like the one way to circumvent that is to just not allow specifically the AO1 or AO2 rulers, just use draft rulers. Because at that point, the regalia just become like, for example, Caduceus gives you a J ruler.
You just have
Drain.
to find a draft. You just have to find a draft ruler you like. Though.
Well, I think there was a couple good ones.
So the
were,
problem is like strangers, right? Like, how do you play with strangers?
dude, like if you've actually done a sealed, like you don't pull a lot.
Yeah,
of
you do
those.
not pull strangers.
Right. So that's the problem, right? Is now I'm pulling these strangers and I can't play any of them because
No,
I
you
don't
can't.
have 10 of
So
them.
like,
So do you use your
no.
stranger deck less than
No, it
10
was like-
and then it
oh,
gets
yeah,
like-
absolutely.
even more broken because you're just playing
Absolutely.
like you're like, oh, I pulled 4 strangers, but this one's broken, so I'm just gonna play this one. And then like
So
that was one of the problems we had in Sealed.
I had someone say, I think in that regard, Ryan Lilly designed a really good draft ruler that has Stranger 1, so you can only
Yep.
pick one Stranger
Yep.
if you get it. But
yeah, that was a really good draft.
but
ruler.
if you don't have a Stranger, so like if you didn't pull a Stranger or choose not to use it, you get an extra like 2 limit counters on it.
Yeah, you get 2
Mm.
limit counters to mana fix.
So like
yeah,
so it's like
Gotcha.
either get a Stranger or you get to have mana fixing as your draft ruler. And I think
And then,
the
like,
flip
it's-
side, I think it on
was put a
flip,
Stranger?
It takes your Stranger to hand.
yeah,
That's all.
Okay.
It does. It's just a
yeah. It was like
4-drop.
super balanced.
It's like
it
a
was good.
4-drop
Yeah.
10. It's like a 4-drop 10/10 with no abilities that just on flip gets your 1 Stranger to your hand.
Makes sense.
And then you can
Gotcha.
either have a Stranger or you can filter twice.
Okay.
So
Makes sense to me. I like that.
And then, yeah, you would
definitely
definitely go 3 and 3.
for this pre-release that we try and use that ruler.
Yeah.
So
And go 3 and 3 on the sealed. Like if you're actually doing a combination, just go 3 and 3.
yeah, for sure. If you're gonna be able to play a combination, I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
So hopefully that answers Todd's question.
God.
Make sure we don't have any other ones, but I think we've hit them all. This was a ton of fun. I hope you guys in the chat
I
enjoyed seeing the chat. We got our 2 new members, Amy and Andrew. Welcome. I think at this point in
Amy.
time, we're 1 new member away from Ryan getting his Hanzo. Mike, join the
Help
channel
me,
as a
boys.
member.
Mike, you're not a
absolutely.
member. Join the channel.
So everybody, come on. So it's again as we close out here,
Shame.
the best way to support the channel is to become that member down below. Again, a $2 a month membership is equivalent to you watching over 400 videos on the channel in terms of what we get for support. So consider that if you like what we're doing. Again, you will get access to all the emojis and stuff, and our teachers lounges and all of the GP live streams are going to be member chat only. We will never paywall video content here. All of the video content will be watchable. It's just if you want to participate in the chat, you got to be a member. So, however, this has been us for tonight. A wonderful conversation as always. We will be back with you later next week. But until next time, this has been myself, DMO73, and I've been joined by Ryan Miles,
Pew!
Mike Rance,
Hey-o.
and the ghost of Josh Patton.
Yeah.
See you all
Ooh.
next time. So until then, have a great week and class dismissed.